Good evening, one and all, and welcome along to Season 2, Episode 125, I do believe. We are looking at these special teams tonight, and joining me, we have the senior, and we have the cinnamon stick over in Scotland. How are you both doing, gentlemen?
Sweating like a pig.
Yeah, it's toasty.
Oh dear.
It is very toasty, but at least we can. At least we can all rejoice in the fact that it's not coming home.
Oh, poor Jamie.
I know. Well,
Yeah. We
he's off
just
the
got a
silver
message
spoon,
from.
so you'll be happy.
We can also rejoice in the fact that we don't have any.
We just got a message
franchise
before
either.
the show.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's many
We just got a
franchise
message before the
deals
show
going on.
started. I seem to be freezing again, and the Irish broadband is acting up.
Oh God, here we go.
You could do what they do in The Martian and just write the questions on a bit of paper and hold it up to the camera.
So, if you can both hear me, give me a thumbs up. There we go. That's more like it. So, we're breaking down we're into the usual spiel of breaking down the special teams today. It's going to be a quick episode, I would imagine, considering we only have a few players on special teams. We have our punters, our kickers, and our long snappers. So,
Was hoping this one would come up.
yes. Oh, yeah. Just before we go any further, let's pull that up. What do we have to say about Richard Sherman, gentlemen?
Well, just for listeners on the audio version, DJ Dog has asked, are we not glad we dodged that Richard Sherman disaster? To be perfectly honest, DJ Dog, absolutely. I didn't want Richard Sherman from day one. I felt that he was a free agent for a reason. He doesn't strike me as a particularly classy player, particularly when you rise to so much of the on-field, shall we say, jive and banter that goes on anyway. Everybody knows about the "Are you mad, bro?" with Tom Brady. He's also had issues with Michael Crabtree as well in the past. There's two just off the top of my head. You rarely hear players come out and name and criticize that way. It stays on the field. But for me, for players to hit the media like that, It's not a classy move. I understand he's a particularly intelligent guy, but he just does some aggravating things just now, and I think he may have burnt his bridges in the NFL. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
But he may have done it because he's a declining player. The last thing he needs is something like this.
Yeah, and it looks like this has been ongoing for a couple of months. A lot of his friends have actually moved to the city as well to keep an eye on him and everything. That what he's been charged with is a bit of a misnomer. That he's been charged with burglary and domestic violence, but that's only because he's kicked in the door of his in-laws' house. He's not actually burgled anything as far as I can see, and the domestic violence is because it's a relation. It's not actually that he has actually hit somebody. But I mean, this is still quite troubling. You throw in the hit and run as well, which seems to have premeditated everything else. And it's not looking good for him, especially when he's actually on the NFL. He's one of the vice presidents of the NFL Players Association as well. So, they've kicked in their domestic violence protocols. And obviously they'll need to suspend him as a vice president at the moment as well. So it's it's not looking good for him at the moment, and you have to wonder whether this is the beginning of some of the lasting side effects from half the hits that he's put on people, and is he going to be one of these people that eventually is going to be diagnosed with CTE? Once he's left this mortal coil. It's horrible to think about, but it's maybe something to consider.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lauren. I hadn't thought about that one at all in terms of Richard Sherman. Before we get into the main bones of the special teams, the main news coming out obviously is camp starts next week. The Cowboys are heading for Oxnard at the weekend. I think they fly out Saturday. They'll have a day off Sunday and then into training camp Monday morning. We've also had the schedule release from the Dallas Cowboys media team in terms of what programs they'll have on, when they'll have on. And Lauren actually caught a great one. It was either today or yesterday, and it's something we will be discussing, is that Rob Phillips put out a great article about Brian Anger, the punter who we brought in during the off-season.
Yep. Yeah. So
we'll dive headlong. Go on.
No. I was saying again, it's sort of fortuitous timing that an article like this appears on the website, just before we're going to be discussing it. So
it feels strange to be heading into a training camp without somebody's franchise tag hanging over our heads or somebody on it sitting with a holdout, doesn't it? Normally we have a little bit of drama that Jerry enjoys in front of the camera. I don't think he's got any just now. I think everybody's signed up. Everybody appears to be happy. So long may it continue.
We've still got 2 third-rounders to sign at the moment, Graham. But I mean, that shouldn't be a problem. That should just be a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I think it's Golston and Sean Wright have still to sign. They're the only ones that didn't sign during the mini camps.
I mean, even that, it doesn't really concern me that, because there isn't a great deal of wiggle room in the salaries anyway. It's more the language of the deal. So if it's only the deal's language, and I think third rounders make, is it just over $1 million they make in their first few years? So it's not really great a concern.
The staging's all set, so I mean it's literally, I think there's something, third rounders are normally quite difficult to deal with because there's some sort of wording that needs to go into the contract. First and second rounders have specific clauses. The third rounders are the clauses are negotiated, and then fourth to seven are easy as well. So it literally is the third rounders that have the difficulty with it. So hopefully it is just the case that they've not been able to get them together to sign, and there's maybe an agreement in principle, it's just not been leaked to the press or something like that, and it's maybe something that will be there for the opening press conferences.
I think in terms of that, I mean, third rounders always seem to take the longest, so it will be done. I don't doubt, Jerry. But I think to Graham's point, in terms of the last 3 years we've gone into camp, we've had DeMarcus Lawrence issues, we've had Dak issues, and last year we had Dak issues again around franchise tags. So it's good not to have that drama hanging over us this off season. Yep. Des Bryant, sorry. I'm sure we'd have someone who would be very happy to have Des Bryant back on this team.
That's a whole show in itself. Andy Valenti couldn't go fast enough.
So just pulling up this one from DJ Dog as well. So we're also taking part in the Hall of Fame game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it will be a reunion in terms of Drew Pearson, Cliff Harris, and Jimmy Johnson all going into the Hall of Fame. great weekend ahead for Cowboys fans.
Yep. And I actually saw a tweet today as well. I think it was Clarence Hill was saying that he'd been speaking to Jimmy Johnson, and Jimmy has said that Jerry has numerously said that he wants to get Jimmy into the Ring of Honor as well. And Jimmy's up for it as well. So it's just a case of when Jerry's in a good mood. So, again, maybe there's an announcement coming this opening of the preseason training camp. That's certainly when they announced that Darren Woodson was going to be put in a couple of years ago as well. So potentially that's what we're looking at.
It's I think for Jimmy Johnson, it's long overdue. I mean, I started following the Cowboys when Jimmy Johnson and Troy Aikman joined up, and 5 seasons, one year as coach of the season with a losing record. I think he's the only head coach to ever do that. 2 Super Bowls. He did it all with the Cowboys.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, you never know. Maybe Jimmy's put a sort of Babe Ruth hex on the Cowboys that as soon as he quit, he says you maybe get another Super Bowl. You're not going to get any more until I'm recognised or whatever. Because Jerry certainly said that anybody could coach the Cowboys to a Super Bowl, and so far only Barry Switzer has. So who's right? Who's wrong?
Yeah. That is very true. In terms of Barry Switzer, I actually rewatched the 1995 America's game where Barry Switzer's Cowboys won the Super Bowl recently, and it was quite enjoyable.
Yep.
Poor Graham is sneezing away there in the background.
Seems to have a few allergies.
Hopefully doing okay.
Hay fever season always hits before the regular season.
Very good. Very good. So if we jump into the special teams, we're going to try. Oh, there we go. Mr. Poland at Disneyland checking in with us.
It's Butlands.
It's Butlands.
Yeah, I think it's Butlands that he's at.
I don't know.
He's been playing with Thomas the Tank Engine and Paw
I think it's Wally World.
He had an appointment with Thomas the Tank Engine and allegedly fell asleep.
But if we jump into things, guys, right? So we have 2 punters on the team right now. We have Hunter Niswander, who came in at the end of the season to displace the punter Chris Jones. And we also have Brian Anger, who we signed from the Houston Texans. Do you think there is a punting competition on this year? And if so, what way would you be leaning with that punting competition?
Oh, I definitely think, there is a competition. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought Brian Anger in. I mean, Brian Anger he was a 3rd-round pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars a few years back. He's punting at an average of 46.2 yards a punt. I think it's something like 560 punts he's had over his career, about 30,000 punt yards. Hunter Niswander last year kicked about 47 yards a punt with a net of 40. It's much of a muchness. Unlike Zerline, whose contract is obviously guaranteed for this year, you weren't going to be moving on from Zerline, but Niswander was technically untested. He was always going to be a step up from Chris Jones, who, for some reason, unbeknownst to us, I mean, he'd been fighting this injury for over a year, trying to rehab it before he actually gave in and had the surgery. Now, why the hell he didn't have surgery during the off season, get himself ready for the upcoming season, I don't know. But he, I think it was his choice not to try and rehab it rather than go for the surgery. And it showed that his numbers had been going down rapidly. Niswander came in, did a serviceable job. In fact, 47 yards a punt is pretty damn good, actually. But just asking, you can't just say, yeah, we're going to go into camp and this guy's going to be the guy, and then you go into the season and he gets 3 blocked in the first week or something like that, or dings 3 and they go sideways and 18 yards the net or something like that. So you can't anoint him as a savior at punter.
Yeah,
it's one of those positions. It's one of those positions where you scrap for every yard in the NFL, and if your punting situation lets you down, or if your kickers don't make that last minute field goal, it's the difference between a win and a loss. So it's dangerous not to just have the guy. You should really have competition, even if it doesn't have much chance of making the team. Even if you've got somebody on huge guarantees, you should still bring somebody else in, because they'll go through training camp. Unless you push them particularly hard, they know the job's theirs. So if they miss 1 or 2, that's okay. Whereas if there's somebody behind them ready to take snaps off of them, they try that a little bit harder. They must do. I mean, nobody's guaranteed anything in the NFL anymore. It's a business. So in a game where it's you live and die for that inch, the punting situations, it gives your defense a better chance if you can consistently put the ball down the other end of the field. And goodness, we know how last minute field goals are important. We've seen enough of them.
Yep. You look at somebody like the Cleveland Browns a couple of years back, where they had Brian Colquitt, who was coming off a Pro Bowl season. They signed Jamie Gillan, the Scottish Hammer, as an undrafted free agent, and Jamie Gillan came in on the back of a couple of rugby tackles during preseason games and everything like that. He actually, and some monstrous kicks as well. I mean, he actually took the place of Colquitt as well. So anything can happen. So it is going to be. I know DJ Dog's saying that Anger is the guy that Bones has said that's the favourite, but I mean, this is probably the most open position on the training camp roster, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, as we say, Brian Anger is proven in the NFL. Something that was going around my head today with the new long snapper or new kicker. How soon before Johnny Hecker is on this roster?
Well, in truth, are we going to need a punter this year? Because our offense is going to score all the time. So,
here we go.
Yeah. Team 50 Burger will ride. But if we were to nail colours to the mast, who do you think will win out in this punter competition? Will it be Anger or will it be Niswander?
I think it'll be Anger. Simply because he was a 3rd round pick at one point. Loss of form. Maybe predicted that he played for a few teams, but I think he certainly has a level of pedigree. If I was to put money on it, I would say Brian Anger. Definitely.
I think if it's neck and neck by the end of camp, I think they go with Niswander. purely for cap reasons. You know, they'll save money on the cap, and obviously we've talked in previous weeks. Next year we'll be needing to make some changes to get under the cap for next season. So the more that you can bring carry forward into the following season, you know, that will help mitigate some of that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that outlook, Lauren. Like, I think it's about a 300,000 difference between the two of them, and yeah, if it's close, it makes sense to bring Niswander with you for the season. Moving on to our kicking situation, and I think it's the first time in years we've not brought in another kicker. It looks like it's just Greg the Leg, it's his job, and it's not being considered at all.
Yep. Well, I mean, he's second year of a 3-year deal. You know, you can say that he was one of the, you know, we at least put points on the board last year, and yes, I think he had a few misses, but certainly nothing like when we had Brett Maher on the team, and you know, it was always a roll of the dice as to whether you were actually going to. It was going to even make it in between the sidelines or not. You know, great. We got 64-yard kicks out of him, but you know, half the time a 39-yarder barely got through the end zone without going out of bounds.
Yeah.
So.
I always remember I said about Brett Maher that he would miss the extra point and nail the 50-yarder. He was infuriating. He really, really was. I mean, no harm to the guy. He came into a pressure situation, but that was tough going, especially because it kills momentum. That see when you miss a tack-on field goal, it kills offensive momentum.
Yeah.
The guys must be going, what are we doing this for? No.
Are either of you disappointed that we didn't bring in a second kicker, just to have a look at what was there, or?
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I mean, we'll need to see how it goes. But yeah, Maher is in the Hall of Fame for making 360 plus or 63-yarder kicks. So that isn't a joke.
Exhibit A to my point. Exactly.
But then I'll also counter that with the name of Damien Craig, who Graham will probably know, but anybody out with the Scottish Claymores wouldn't know. Damien Craig's also in the Hall of Fame because he had a 613-yard passing game. And that's in NFL football, that's the largest total. It's actually been beaten in the CFL. There's somebody had the 713 yards, but you know, that just goes to show that you can do 2 or 3 good things and then you can make it into the Hall of Fame that way, but you're not in the actual busts, the collection of busts. Right, what were we saying?
Hey, listen, we could go on with those all night. Mars Claiborne has a Super Bowl ring. So
does Taco Charlton.
We could go on all night.
Right. The question was, should we have brought somebody else in? I think, yeah, you certainly should, because if nothing else, five kicks a day, you're talking 30 days or so of training camp. You know, so that's a lot to put, and you're also talking about anything that's going on in the preseason games as well. And we've got an extra preseason game this year as well. You know, that's a lot to put on a kicker's leg before even getting to the regular season. Having said that, you know, you never know. as we were discussing safeties last week, if a position comes up, then we could always sign Jeff Heath, and then you've got both a kicker and a safety. So
He always sneaks into the podcast somewhere.
yeah, well,
and it's not me that's saying it. Well,
I just thought I'd throw that one out there after my shelf stacking comment last week. So,
yeah. But to answer your question, Brian, I'm not necessarily concerned. I mean, is there going to be any real competition for Greg Zerline? Is there really? I mean, you'd imagine the best 32 kickers in the league have a job. He's a seasoned professional. He's a veteran. He's done it over and over and over again. He's got a nice juicy contract. Why would they bother? Why couldn't they bring in? If they bring in a kicker, they don't bring in another cornerback or a safety or a D lineman. Maybe they lose one of the quarterbacks for the backup competition. You never know. So if you look at it in terms of roster spots, I mean, is a kicker really going to challenge Greg Zerline? I don't think so. So go and bring somebody else in to have a look, a meaningful look.
No, if he starts missing kicks in the opening week training camp, then the training camp roster is going to be quite fluid. You'll see a lot of people getting added and a few people getting released here, there, and everywhere, or going on injury settlements. So as a roster spot shows up, if Zerline's kicking badly in training camp, then that's certainly an option. You maybe bring somebody in to give him the sort of proverbial kick up the backside, and hopefully spur a bit of competition that way.
But you mean like Dan Bailey, for instance?
Yeah. I mean, you think of the number of times that he was almost on his way out, and
free agent.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true.
That might be his. He might just be waiting on a phone call.
Yeah.
There's every chance he's just waiting on the right opportunity, waiting on a phone call.
Yeah.
Not from the Cowboys necessarily, but from somebody that's having kicker issues.
Yeah. I mean, I think gone are the days of Dan Bailey being Dan Bailey automatic when we had him in his early seasons with Dallas.
Yeah.
And even into his latter days, I mean, I still think we were all stunned when Brett Maher won the kicking competition that none of us knew was even taking place. So, I mean, Dan Bailey went to the Vikings and, what they spent, was it a fifth rounder or something that they took a kicker last year? Or traded a fifth rounder for a kicker last year?
I can't remember.
Yeah. I think they did something crazy like that they brought somebody in and Dan Bailey still won the job and then they cut Dan Bailey mid-season. But moving on and looking at the long snapper position, this is the first time since we were in Texas Stadium that we are starting with a long snapper whose name is not Luis Pierre Ladouceur, under center.
Yep.
I mean, LP, was it 19 years he had, Lauren, or 17 years he had?
I want to say it was 19 because I think it was oh no, it can't have been that long actually because it was Parcells was coaching at the time. And it was we were on a 2-week West Coast game. I think we'd lost to the 49ers. We were about to play the Raiders, and we'd obviously had enough of John Kondo, the rookie long snapper there. Obviously, it caused Jose Cortez to miss a kick, which ended up costing us against the 49ers that year, if I remember rightly. And it was purely because we were staying there. LP was down at one of the colleges in the area. Parcells had said to the scouts, "Go and find me somebody else to come in for a tryout." LP was just down the road. He came up, left with the job. So, it's certainly a long time. And I mean, as we discussed when he was released, I mean, he was only a few games off.
Yeah, 2005.
So he was only a few. He was only a few games off matching Jason Witten's record for consecutive games.
Yeah. So we've brought in Jake McQuaid. He's very familiar with John Fassel. He had played for the Rams. So I mean, John Fassel seems to ask, and he seems to get whatever he wants in terms of special teams. Hence my Johnny Hecker question earlier. But I mean, this guy has been an all pro. He's been to Pro Bowls. I mean, as great as LP was, is this guy an upgrade?
I mean, he's no spring chicken. He's 34. So he might only be around for a few years. Sorry, Lon, on you go.
No, I was going to say Graham's disappeared. The thing I was going to say there is that he's younger than LP, and I mean LP we were literally bringing back every year for $1 million, and then doing a deal so that it was on the veteran minimums. So you were able to bump it up by there's some sort of special clause that allows you to pay him about $1.5 million or so, but it still only counts less than $1 million on the cap. 19 years is at some point you're probably you're probably close to breaking. We're bringing in McQuaid, who I think is only about 10 years or so. So that's certainly maybe it was time to move on. And yes, the fact that he has the familiarity with Fassel probably facilitated that move.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those positions where you do your job right and you do your job right every time, but if you do your job wrongly, you get crucified. They have to be stick-ons. They have to effectively be robots and never get it wrong. Everybody said, "Oh, it's just a long snapper," but if you've got a punting situation, if you're 7 points up with 2 minutes left on the clock, and your long snapper throws the ball over the punter's head, and it ends up in the end zone, that puts you in some amount of trouble. So these guys have to be robots, and they have to get it right every single time, because if they don't get it right, it can go very, very badly.
Yeah, and I mean, long snapping is not something that's easy at all. And obviously the NFL has simplified it a little bit in that nobody's allowed to be head up over the long snapper, because basically the long snapper's in a much wider stance than any other offensive lineman. It's almost practically that he's doing the splits just so that he can get the power to generate the ball going back, either the 15 yards for a punt or 7 yards but pinpoint accuracy going along the floor for a field goal kick. And especially everything has to be split second timing, because if the opposition can get round the corner, the ball needs to be in the air within 2 seconds. So it is a very special job. And I mean, as I say, I've tried doing it before when I was playing. I was the guy that I could always do the punt. I was okay at punt snapping, but if you wanted me to try and snap for a field goal, the ball was going over the kicker's head, let alone the holder's head.
So there's a lot of 2-point conversions on your team, Lauren, was there?
Yeah, I think so. Or I didn't hold the job for very long. I think somebody else came along and took it. So, but I still don't think we made many kicks. So,
but just small point here. In terms of, we did put up a Twitter poll during the week. In terms of, does anyone think we'll score a touchdown off a kickoff this season? I mean, I know we had the CD Lamb one in the latter half of the season against the 49ers, where they were trying for an onside kick anyway. So it's not really a true reflection of a kickoff return for a touchdown. Do either of you think it will happen this year?
I actually voted no on that because the way, obviously, the way that the NFL has schemed everything for the kickoffs now, it is, back in the days where we were kicking from the 30-yard line, and the ball wasn't going as far into the end zone. But the number of times in a kickoff now, the ball goes into the end zone or goes out the back of the end zone. It's only in those occasions where you want, you've maybe scored, you want towards the end of the game, you want to fritter away some of the time, and you maybe pooch kick it so that the return team are actually having to waste a few seconds of clock rather than giving them an extra few seconds to march down the field and maybe get into field goal range for the win. So the number of kickoff returns, I think, has dropped dramatically, and I don't see that we have a guy like Devin Hester or Deion Sanders who were pretty automatic in scoring a touchdown every year. So
yeah, I think you and I have agreed on this point a few times, Brian, that the last thing you want your first round wide receiver to be doing is taking punt returns and kick returns. Absolutely no chance, not for me. I mean, it's always scary when you see like talent like that. I mean, we've had plenty of it. Des Bryant, CeeDee Lamb. You basically got 10 guys coming down the field trying to take your head off, and it's not a healthy situation for one of your stud receivers. Like Lauren was saying, we don't have a Devin Hester, and they are dying breeds. The Devin Hesters of this world. I couldn't name you. I couldn't name you three. If I thought about it, I might be able to name you one or two, but I couldn't name you three, simply because the NFL is trying to eradicate it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, and seeing the next few years, I wouldn't be surprised if they forced fair catches for punts.
Yeah,
for me, that's not far away. Player throws up his arm and he catches it, and they play from there. If he loses control of the ball, that's another story. That's a live ball, and it's all to play for. But the amount of times you see fair catches from punters, you see the ball sail out the back of the end zone. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I think there's a little bit of laziness involved in that. I think for what kickers can do nowadays, I would be aiming for my kicker to get the ball inside the 10, no matter where he's kicking it from. They should be able to level off on the power rather than, because it's to the 25-yard line, isn't it? It's to
35.
35-yard line that you kick off.
Touchback's 25 yards.
On kickoff, on the kickoff, it is.
So see if you take that in terms of percentages, they're already a quarter of the way down the field.
Yep.
So I would be looking for my kicker to put it inside the 10, but it seems all too easy nowadays for the teams just to put it out the back of the end zone, no risk of giving up a touchdown, and that's simply the reason why the Devin Hesters of this world are dying out, because the teams don't want to do it. They don't want the risk. So everybody else is taking out that particular team's Devin Hester. They're not giving a special teams player that limelight to go and score a touchdown. And
I think
watch out for. That's one of my predictions. Watch out for fair catches automatic fair catches on punt returns, because that's next.
Yep. I mean, I think one of the reasons why they're kicking out the end zone now is that, again, with the rule changes, that the kicking off team can't move until the kickers have kicked the ball. So you're not getting the same sort of where it was that the offensive players could actually, or the kicking off team could actually move prior to the ball getting kicked off. They were getting downfield a lot quicker. You had, previously you had the wedge as well. Wedges aren't allowed this time, so it just makes it a lot easier for there to be one-on-one blocking, and then you're left with situations where it would be a kick returner versus the kicker. And unless you've got somebody who's willing to go in and make the tackle, that is going to give up touchdowns if there is a return. And teams don't want to risk that, so it's easier to kick it out the back of the end zone where possible, and give up 25 yards than potentially give up a 40-yarder purely on the basis that the rules have changed and it's one-on-one tackling or one-on-one blocking.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say about kickoff returns. I mean, how many times have you guys been sitting watching any particular game, and how often have you heard illegal block in the back, kicking team? The referees are desperate to call it, and see if that goes for a touchdown, and there's an illegal block in the back, it's coming all the way back. So I think that's another reason why they're clamping down on kickoff returns, because they're protecting they're protecting players an awful lot more these days. And the amount of times I've been watching a game and it's illegal block in the back, kicking team, it must be absolutely infuriating for the guy that's just carried the ball 40 yards downfield and one of his teammates has just made a march 10 yards the other way.
Yeah. For me, I think it's a bit of a circus, to be honest, the way they've taken the kickoff out of the game. Like, effectively, guy comes up, kicks the ball 65 yards, dead ball. I think they should be encouraging a bit of a competition for it and say, right, if you kick the ball dead, the opposing team starts at the 40, because teams just know, kick it through the end zone. That's all they have to do. Like I've how many times have we seen a kicker put it through the uprights? There's no chance of bringing it back out. So at least make the kickoff some part of the game rather than just, it's kickoff, I'm going to the toilet because I know there won't be anything happening for 2 minutes. It's a toilet break, or turn the kettle on for the late night coffee that we're about to have, or whatever like that. It's not part of the game anymore.
But the GMs love it because everybody rushes to the concession stands.
This is it. As I say, a circus.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things they're trying to eradicate. I understand all for trying to make the game safer for the players, but it's a contact sport and it's a violent sport, and I think they need to be very, very careful with what they're doing, because I've said a few times on the show before that, in my opinion, quarterbacks are a little bit overprotected nowadays. I know they're the main target for the defense, but I think it's plain to see that the NFL want high scoring games, and the only way you can get a high scoring game is having the starting quarterback on the field. So they're going to protect. I mean, you'll know yourselves, and I know we're going a bit off tangent, but see the low hits on QBs and running into the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. It's getting softer and softer. You guys agree?
Yeah,
I do, but it's not as bad as a couple of years ago where the referees were told to focus on that, and you were seeing memes about that you didn't put a pillow down for the quarterback to fall on and things like that. So the competition committee obviously realised that they'd gone too far or briefed the refs to go too far on that side of things, and it has levelled off a bit. But you know, certainly, I mean, quarterbacks, you know, when they're throwing their, you know, with their arm up like that, they are opening up the rib cage quite easily, and then you know, there was the odd incident like in Damakansu that would stand on Aaron Rodgers' legs when he was lying on the floor or what have you. So you do have to protect them a little bit, but a lot of this is also on the back of the CBA as well. That and obviously on the back of the CTE. Discovery as well, that you know, they've got to try and do something so that the the players who played in the 60s and 70s, a lot of them are actually you know, suffering from MND and various other illnesses as well. I mean, you only have to look at the guy Earl Campbell, you know, what he looks like nowadays and how he's constantly in a wheelchair. And I think Tony Dorsett for the Cowboys as well. He is his short-term memory is absolutely shot. That he has to absolutely write everything down, from what I understand. So, and you know, he actually can't leave the house without somebody else with him, because you know, he can quite easily, you know, go off into a brain fog, and you know, God knows where he'd end up if he's not with somebody. So you do have to protect the players a little bit, especially with what we've learned in the last 15, 20 years or so about player safety. But yes, there is an essence. What you could probably do is, again, in the CFL, you know, they haven't got that you can fair catch or anything like that. You must advance the ball. If you don't advance the ball, the kicking team actually get points. So you could maybe introduce something like that, so that, you know, there is no fair catch anymore. But again, if you bring something in like that, you know, again, you're not the gunners coming down the field maybe interfere with the player, interfere with the receiver, and you know, how do you control that as well? You know, at the moment, if there's a fair catch, you've got to give them 2 yards or something like that to make the catch.
Yeah, I think the other part of today's program that we said we were going to look at is actually running down the coaching roster and what our thoughts are on that. I mean, Mike McCarthy, he's heading into his second year. I think we'll give him a mulligan on last year. And Graham, I mean, we all know the great Sir Ian Wilson and his love of the Green Bay Packers. And Mike McCarthy's second season with Green Bay, they absolutely lit it up. And so would you expect a similar outcome this year with our Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I'm gonna give you an example from another sport. The Tampa Bay Lightning just won their second Stanley Cup in a row. From what I understand, Tampa Bay were patient with their guys, and their head coach is now, his name escapes me just now, but he's the longest tenured NHL head coach. So you've got to be patient. You've got to be patient. You can't just, in my opinion, you can't rip up the script after one season, because see, if you start that nonsense, you're going to be spinning round and round and round, and each coach wanting to bring in his guys, and before you know it, you're going to end up like the Jets, who go through head coach after head coach after head coach, because the New York media simply won't give them any time. See, once the media turn on a coach in New York, he's out the door. So for me, I'm still a Mike McCarthy guy. I urge patience on this one. There are very few head coaches in the NFL who have Super Bowl rings. Mike McCarthy is one of them. So he knows the road to the Super Bowl, and he knows how to work with a top caliber quarterback. He knows how to get the best out of players. he has had a full off season now, a better off season, I might add. Presumably they will get more time with their players and they'll be able to, certainly the vaccinated players, but that's another issue. He has had a second draft, which I think is hugely important as well. See, when you're bringing in a whole backroom of coaches, you're going to get a few wrong. It's as simple as that, because you can't just approach other teams and say, he's done quite well there, I'll take him. He's done quite well, and I'll bring him in. You're going to have to pull a couple of guys off the street, and simply by doing that, you're going to miss. DJ Dogs just made a comment there. Of course, Quinn's an upgrade on Mike Nolan. Absolutely. If he can bring a bit of the Seahawks to that defense, then it's going to be huge. Certainly with having the fourth game in the Hall of Fame game, I think that's going to be big for us as well, because we start before everybody else. So I'm still a Mike McCarthy guy. I'm going to urge patience on this one, because the last thing they want to do is rip up the playbook every single summer, because it's not good for Dak. It's definitely not good for Dak. That is why they kept a huge element in Kellen Moore, so that Dak had some continuity. So, my message right now is let's be patient.
Yeah, Lauren, anything to add on top?
No, I'd agree with that. You know, if you've got to give guys a chance to, you know, you're bringing guys in, you want them to change the culture from a losing culture or a 50-50 culture to turn it into a winning culture. That can't be done overnight. And if you're putting the pressure on them, that's when you see these trades where they give up 2-3 number one picks to move up in the draft, get somebody who's in the top 10 or something like that. And then invariably, if that doesn't work out, you get fired. The new coaching staff that comes in, they're already handicapped because they're missing a first round pick from the next year or whatever. And they're also looking at the players that have been drafted by the previous administration are maybe not the players that they want. So you got to give them the time. I'm willing to. I think last year as well, the fact that COVID, we've talked that they didn't get the install period that is normally done through the OTAs. The training camp as well was quite regimented in that everybody had to still remain apart from 2 meters apart from each other. The amount of time that they were actually on the field was limited. They were still doing a lot of stuff. All it took is somebody to turn up and have a false negative, and then you're already closing down one area of the whether one positional room or something like that. You're making that go virtual. That just added to the list of problems last year that. You really have to give them a mulligan on it.
I mean, see simply from an offensive position, which is Mike McCarthy's kind of forte. I would go out on a limb and say that we had a top 3 offense. I don't think a top 3 offense is too ridiculous to say, simply because we had to outscore teams. So as soon as the defense makes any kind of adjustment and improvement, you're going to see an awful lot more wins, because we've retained the vast majority of that offense. We still have a couple of questions at guard and at centre, but 3 wide receivers are still there. Both our tackles are there. Dak is back. Zeke is still there and looking leaner than ever. So give McCarthy a chance with that offense and a better defense, because with a better defense, you'll see more of Zeke. And that is back to the winning formula we had 2016, 2017. So a little bit of patience, I will say again.
Yeah. I mean, you both kind of made the point about, you know, there's a boom bust cycle in this team, and it's rarely above 500. I mean, I think the one thing you cannot say about Mike McCarthy is he's a 500 guy. Mike McCarthy was regularly winning double-digit games with the Green Bay Packers. They were always 10, 11, 12, 13 wins a season teams. I think, I'm pulling that from my own mind. I don't have anything to back that up.
No,
but
you're right.
That's the kind of head coach you have. So you have to give him, as you say, the 3, 4, 5, 6 years to get that culture in place, and then you can build on that. You can supplement that through the draft, but you can't just automatically bring that into the Dallas Cowboys. You mentioned Kellen Moore there. Kellen is moving into his 3rd season as the offensive coordinator. I'm still not in love with the idea of Kellen Moore. I know, Graham, you're a big fan. Lauren, I'm not sure about your own opinions, but talk to me about Kellen Moore and your opinions on him.
Yeah, obviously we've been in the top half of the league in terms of offense the last couple of years under Kellen Moore. If you watch the YouTube video of Kellen Moore sitting down with John Gruden when he was coming out of the draft, and you can see that he has the potential there. He's got a good offensive mind. He's the son of a coach, so he obviously knew what was required. He's got the pedigree at least at the collegiate level, where he was the winningest quarterback in Boise State history, and in fact it was in the entire Division 1A at one point. I don't know if he still is there. The weakness I think that Kellen Moore has, and hopefully, I think we laughed at it a couple of weeks ago when I mentioned it, but the signing of Ben McAdoo as a offensive specialist.
Yes.
Kellen Moore always seems to have can move the ball easily between the 20s, but when you're either in your 0 to 20, and you're trying to control the ball to make sure that you don't make a mistake, or you're going into the red zone to try and score a touchdown, and there's not a lot of real estate left. That's where he has his problems. He has difficulty scheming it to get the guys open. Now you saw a little bit last year where we had the sort of option play where there was a handoff to Zeke, and then he pitched out to CD Lamb to score one of the touchdowns last season. So Kellen Moore is able to scheme things to try and get it open, but as far as wide receiver routes, that's where he has the difficulty. He hasn't mastered where sort of New England are very good at the what you call rub, where a wide receiver runs his route, accidentally runs into a cornerback who's taking somebody who's meant to be cutting underneath him or something like that. As long as if you can sell that well enough, then that's something that the Patriots have always excelled at, and that's something that we need to work on. Now it is difficult, especially as you can say that the coaches can tell you what to do. It's whether the players actually execute. Now can Kellen Moore get that across to the players, try and teach them in the way that we've seen Dan Quinn getting involved in the defensive linemen? Can Kellen try and do that with the receivers, or can the receivers coach try and do that as well, where you discuss it through them so that the players know what to do instinctively when they're on the field? That's what we need to work on. It's just scheming better in the red zone.
Yeah,
I would say on Kellen Moore, I'm not a huge fan, but I like what is there. He's still a particularly young coach in terms of offensive coordinator. I think there are better coordinators out there in the league, certainly. But a quick question for the both of you: how many times did the Cowboys break 30 points during last season?
I'm thinking somewhere between 5 and 6.
Every time we won.
They did it 8 times. Now you're going, if we broke 30 points 8 times,
yeah,
it's not the offense that's the problem. When you consider, I mean, I'm just looking at the scores just now. There was the disaster we went through when Dak went down 3 points to the Redskins, 9 to the Eagles, and 19 to the Steelers. That was the kind of ropey point between October and November. But they rallied in December. They rallied. They scored 30 points, over 30 against the Bengals, the 49ers, and the Eagles. So it's almost as if Moore kind of adjusted to his third, fourth string QB and still got points on the board. Now, fair enough, the season is it's tailing away at that point, but you're still fighting for your job. And for us to break 30 points 8 times during a turmoil season on offense, particularly the quarterback position, I think is particularly good. I will agree with what DJ Dog said about the red zone awareness. There are some infuriating times where you go, just give it to Zeke, just let him pound it. But I mean, they had me on the runway to go and play offensive line at one point last year, so they were literally pulling guys off the street. I think if you give Kellen Murray's offense to play with, good things happen, because we saw that before Dak went down. Certainly the offensive side of the ball is not the issue on this team. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
and
and
Moore plays his part in that.
Yeah. You only need if we had a middle of the league defense last year, I think we would have had a few more wins. We probably would have been in the playoffs without needing help or whatever. And once you're in the playoffs, anything happen. All it takes is a play here, play there, and you're progressing to the next round, or you're going home. So that's
the point here in terms of, say, the red zone is one of Kellen Moore's weaknesses, and that's been evident for the last couple of years. But is that a case of we were missing that big-bodied receiver, a Des Bryant, a Jason Witten, to take the ball in the end zone? We don't seem to have that guy on the team anymore. Say like that back shoulder fade from Tony to Des. That doesn't seem to be there with Dak or any of his receivers. Is that what we're missing?
I think you've maybe got that coming on with CD Lamb. I mean, if you look at the touchdown that he made in the Minnesota game, which obviously gets shown a lot of the time, he is obviously quite good at adjusting to the ball if it's not a perfectly thrown pass. It was a lot to ask of a rookie last year. This is his second year, as I say. He's coming in. He's had a year in the off-season program, weights program. He looks a lot leaner this year, or a lot more muscly, but at the same time, that's a sort of receiver's physique. He's not suddenly gone up to a tight end physique or anything like that. It's that's potentially where he could shine. I certainly don't think Cooper's necessarily capable of it, and Gallup at the moment is one of these guys that has to he can certainly air up for the ball, but Gallup always seems to make his place when there's a lot of real estate in front of him. Yes, he's maybe coming down the sideline, but there's still a safety away, looking to take away anybody that manages to escape the one-on-one coverage.
On that point, I would say you kind of have to decide what you want from your receivers. And I think our receivers aren't too far away from each other. We don't have a speedster, particularly a starting speedster. Anyway, we don't have somebody, in my opinion, that will take the top off. I don't think there's a 4-4 receiver that will start. But again, a lot of the teams don't. I mean, if you're a big-bodied receiver, are you going to be quick in and out of your breaks? And I think that's what the Cowboys prefer. I think they prefer possession receivers that can get first and 10 as opposed to an end zone target.
Yeah. I just looked this up, right? Because just while you were saying that, Simi Fehoko, 6'4" receiver. Is he your potential red zone threat?
If he makes the team,
I think he will make the team.
I mean, it's as simple as that. I've said it countless times. How many receivers are you going to keep? Because we've already got 3. It really depends. He'll need to play special teams. Because I think it's the point I always raise. After the draft, if one of the teams on the phone to, if you're a wide receiver and one of the teams on the phone to you is the Cowboys, I wouldn't answer the call because there's a very, very slim chance you're going to make the Cowboys roster. You'd have to play special teams. So are we going to see him? It's the Tony Pollard. There's only one ball. Are you going to see him? Are you going to march all the way down the field and roll out a big-bodied receiver to go and make the end zone? I know certainly if I was one of the 3 starters, I'd be like, well, why am I sitting here not getting my stats? You're rolling out this guy to go and catch the ball in the end zone. And if he was that efficient, why is he on the Cowboys? Why is he not a day 2 receiver? I'm not being mean. I'm just suggesting that because he's a wide receiver on the Cowboys, is he actually going to make the team?
I mean, I think
it's just the state of the Cowboys wide receiver core. It's up there.
I think, to be fair, DJ Dog has kind of captured the point I would make is that Noah Brown, Cedric Wilson and Fehoko are fighting for 2 spots. And for me, and this goes back to the point that Lauren makes almost every podcast we do, Cedric Wilson is looking at 2.2 million hit against the cap this year. And I don't think he has the production for 2.2 billion. And that is why I would be saying we can walk away because there's no dead cap there. He was signed at the same time as Antoine Woods on a tender. So I think it will be Noah Brown and Semi Fehoko that make the team. But you've both kind of mentioned the point that if we had a middle of the road defense, I'm just bringing up DJ Dog's point again. Dan Quinn is an upgrade over Mike Nolan.
Yep.
Discuss.
Well, 100%. I mean, the problem in Nolan last year, and I've said this in previous podcasts, he, particularly again with COVID, that they didn't get the install periods during the OTAs and mini camps, and here he is. The Marinelli scheme was know what you've got to do and do your job, and it's a battle of talent more than anything else. Nolan came in and said, first of all, we're not going to make the player fit my scheme. We're supposedly going to make the scheme fit the players that we have. We didn't see that. Then, this multiple front, which again, we're still supposed to be having a multiple front this year. But what Nolan was trying to advocate was that, you maybe line up in a 4-3, but then you look across the line, you see that they've gone with 21 personnel or something like that. That then tells you to go to a 3-4. And it's, then within two steps of the snap, the cornerbacks are meant to look at the receivers in front of them and say, right, that receiver's doing this, right, I've got to go to cover 3 coverage as opposed to go to cover 4 coverage or something like that, or go man coverage. And that just, because you didn't have that install period, as soon as the COVID rules came in place, Mike Nolan should have said, look, I've got to keep this simple. If you're converting, and, to give him his due, supposedly he dumbed down the playbook a little bit as the season went on, especially after Jane Slater came out with the unsolicited comments from players that the scheme wasn't working and the coaches weren't listening to the players' feedback. He was just asking too much of the players last year, and it had the effect that the players weren't able to play to their abilities because they were having to try and think. If you keep the scheme as simple as possible, or you get them educated up into your scheme, that's when they can be more instinctive. Yes, they maybe have to check with something, check a key or something like that, but then they can actually play at game speed. It looked like last year with guys like Worley giving up all the yards, the long TD passes, whatever. That was purely that they just couldn't do it. They couldn't think and play at the same time.
Yeah,
and that was Nolan's problem.
Yeah,
looking at
before we go any further, we've just one of the other members of the team has just dropped us a message. Tom Brady tore his MCL during the Super Bowl. He's had surgery and is recovering. I mean, if he played with torn bloody MCL in the Super Bowl and still won, I mean, are we going to drug test this guy or what? It's not natural what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Brady, no wonder one of his nicknames is Captain America. Honestly, I mean, I might get shot down here by the viewers, but I'm a huge admirer of Tom Brady. I think simply to do it that long and have that many. I mean, he hasn't won all those rings by chance. He must do so much homework. He must have so much fire for the game. I know about the deflated footballs and all that kind of stuff, but just for him to go, I mean, to still be doing it at that age with a brand new team. He stepped in with a brand new team and took them to the Super Bowl. They'll be building a statue soon enough of in Tampa. I mean, I don't think this gets said enough across the wider media. The money Tom Brady makes in his contract, I think, is always underlooked. It's always passed off. For him to take such a low relative wage compared to the rest of the quarterbacks in the league, that means they can go and spend it somewhere else. They can go and spend it on a pass rusher that will get them back on the field. They can spend it. I mean, you look at the money that the Patriots spent on defense. That's because they could spend that money because Tom Brady wasn't at Kraft's door banging. I need paid. I'm not the highest paid. I need to be highest. I need to. Where's my money? I mean, think of the quarterbacks down the line that have gone. I don't want to be highest paid. Where's my money? I'm not coming to training camp until I'm the highest paid. I don't think you ever heard that from Tom Brady. That has got to be admired. Whether you love or hate Tom Brady, you have to admire that in him. That he wasn't. It was all about the rings for Tom Brady at the end of the day. He was never motivated by money. But let's face it, he's had such a long career. I mean, how many lifetimes would you need to spend Tom Brady's money? Honestly, I mean, it's not as if he's poorly paid.
Yep.
I mean, I might be in the minority, but I'm a huge admirer of Tom Brady.
If I was to make one point on this, and I'll jump over to you then, Lauren, on it. But I mean, if you look at Tom Brady, right, he's done a deal with the devil in terms of the success he has. But as you were saying, Graham, look at the money he's foregone. Look at the situations he's been in. He saw Jimmy Garoppolo, who was his supposed successor, brought in, knuckle down, fought harder. I read The Dynasty there over Christmas, and the work ethic of Tom Brady. I think after a defeat, they got back to Foxborough. He went straight into the stadium, started studying tape, and was there the following morning when the whole team came in for training. But the point I want to make in terms of, look at that Jimmy Garoppolo situation. He was brought in to succeed Tom Brady. Brady knuckled down, won more Super Bowls, and Garoppolo was gone. Look at what's happening in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is throwing his toys out of the pram because they've brought in a guy who's not displacing them right away. The Green Bay Packers are protecting their own investment, but Rodgers is throwing his toys out of the pram. I mean, would you prefer to have one Super Bowl ring or 7?
Yep.
But if I throw it over to you now, Lauren, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say as well, even the contracts that Brady did sign, the number of times that he maybe signed one that was going to pay you $100 million over 5 years or something like that, but by the next season he's obviously identified that there is weakness in various parts of the team, and he'd go in and say, right, knock 5 million off this year, 5 million off next year, or whatever, and that allied that's the whole reason why Tampa Bay are actually bringing back all of their starters on offense and defense this season. Whether they actually start the season with that 22 players or not, actually as starters, because hopefully you should have some of these guys actually losing a step, and you should have these hungry rookies or young players coming up and taking positions. Otherwise, at some point, your level of competition on the team will hinder your progress. But the number of times, it's why a lot of the time you see a lot of these quarterbacks who sign long-term deals and they're cut after 2-3 years because, again, they haven't fulfilled on the contract, or the third year salary is just astronomically high, and if they were going to keep that on you would have to start signing street free agents to fill out your 53. So for somebody like Brady, you have to admire that. Now, counteractively, you could say that he's married to Gisele Bündchen. He's not going to be short of a bob whether he was earning 660,000 a season or 25 million. He's got a secondary income if nothing else. So
listen, hats off to Gisele, because the amount of times they've been living, they've not been too far away from New York. They're living in Miami now. They live in California as well. And imagine the amount of times she said, "Come on, let's go out for the night." And Tommy replied, "No, sorry, I've got game tape to watch."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the situation there about Aaron Rodgers as well. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he should remember back to the start of his career where Brett Favre was effectively the same thing. As soon as the Packers lucked into getting Aaron Rodgers because he dropped to 26 in the draft, you'd be stupid not to take him. But Brett Favre spat the dummy out then that they've picked a quarterback. This means that they're looking to move on from me, and I'm not going to help this guy come in and all that. And it took a couple of years before Aaron Rodgers took over from Brett Favre and they moved on. But that transition could have gone a lot easier, and there could have been less animosity. I think that was part of the reason why Brett Favre actually signed with Minnesota, so that he was still in the division. I think he went to the Jets first, but then he went.
Yeah.
He then came, when he hit the free agent market again, he certainly came back to Minnesota. So
yeah. So before this program turns fully into the New England Patriots and Green Bay Packers podcast, let's get ourselves back on track anyway. We were talking about Robert Kraft or Robert Quinn, and then Dan Quinn, our new defensive coordinator. So a lot of people have said that Dan Quinn was the best acquisition we made in this offseason. I want to counter that and say the Atlanta Falcons were only marginally better on defense than us last season. So have we picked a guy on reputation from a couple of years ago, which we did with Nolan? Or have we picked a guy who is genuinely going to improve the defense this year?
It's a valid question. It's a valid question. To go back to the question before that, it would be difficult not to be better than Mike Nolan, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I think you could bring in some quarterback coaches that would do particularly better than Mike Nolan on defense, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, it simply wasn't good enough. 49 points to the Browns in October. That's not good enough. He was lucky to keep his job after that. I get that the Browns are a better team. They have the quarterback and they have some stud wide receivers nowadays, but nobody should be giving up 49 points to anybody. I mean, honestly, that's awful. That's I think he was lucky to keep his job after that, to be perfectly honest. But to Brian's question, yeah, there is a certain element of reputation about it, but do you want to roll the dice on somebody who's untried? This is the other side.
Yeah.
You know, you could bring in somebody that has a ring, or you could go with somebody who's been a defensive back coach or a D-line coach, something along those lines. Nobody springs to mind, to be perfectly honest. I don't take particularly defensive. I don't take a defensive view, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, if they're going to go with experience, Dan Quinn's the one to do it. Simply to bring us up to a mediocre level. I don't think would be too difficult. I think the Cowboys need to go back to basics on defense, to be perfectly honest. Not overthink things. They need to. It would be helpful, in my opinion, if they would sort out if they were going to be 4-3 or 3-4. I think that's still a fluid situation. But yeah, just get back to basics. You know your gap, know your assignment, and go and execute. Because there was far too much floating about, to be perfectly honest, on defense last year. Jalen Smith being the prime candidate.
Let's not go back down that rabbit hole. But
I think the one thing you've got to say is that guys like how many times do you see guys that have been the hotshot offensive or defensive coordinator promoted to get a head coaching job, and then you automatically go from looking after potentially 22 guys on the roster, where you then go into the head coach. You're responsible for all 53 guys plus the 10 practice squad guys. You've got to determine training camp schedules. You've got to be involved in talking to the owner. Guys, look at guys like Dave Wanstead, North Turner,
Josh McDaniels,
Matt Patricia,
Wade Phillips, Matt Patricia. Look at all these guys that are Belichick disciples who then go off and supposedly, they go off to either, even at college level, they go off and they're supposed to be charged with turning around franchises there, or turning around college with tradition and everything like that. And, they don't manage it because, they've gone past their level of capability. And I think, to hold Dan Quinn entirely responsible for the way the Atlanta Falcons were last year is, it's not something you can suddenly walk away and say, no, leave the offense to do what they need to do. I'm going to work solely with the defense. You then create even the sort of chemistry with the players. If the coach is spending more time with the defense, the offensive players will be good. The head coach doesn't give a damn about us. We won't listen to him when he's trying to rile us, get us G'd up for the game or something like that. Yes, we're going on reputation that he did manage to turn Seattle into a defensive force. What I like is what we've seen in preseason with the OTAs, that he is getting down and dirty in the trenches. He's, turn the baseball cap round and I'll play nose tackle for a couple of snaps while Bohanna's getting his helmet seen to or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what you need, is somebody who's willing to actually get in and, like a mechanic. You don't want a mechanic that plugs the car into a system and the system tells you what's wrong. You want somebody who's going to go in and get in with the nuts and bolts, and that's where you then, maybe the system's telling you that this is wrong, but as you're going in to have a look at it, so you notice something else is wrong that potentially has problems further down the road, and that's the sort of guy you need, and that's somebody that Dan Quinn is. So I'm willing to say, yeah, I think he's going to be an improvement this year on well, he's going to be an improvement on Marinelli's defenses as well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, certainly in terms of age on the D, I wouldn't want to put an untried coordinator in there. I mean, see, some situations during this season, you could end up with 4 rookies on the defense at any one point, particularly in the backfield. You could have a rookie or 2 on the D line as well. So somebody who knows their assignments. But that's a great point, actually, that DJ Jogs just brought up there, because Thomas Dimitroff was in Atlanta for a long time and never really scratched the Super Bowl. So they've just decided to clean house and start again. I mean, he made some questionable signings, questionable decisions. So Quinn had to deal with that as well. But certainly in terms of bringing in Quinn over somebody untried, it's a very, very young defense he's got to work with. So somebody in the coordinator seat needs to know what they're doing. And to Lauren's point as well, when you're a head coach, you need to rely on giving one side of the ball to somebody else. Quinn doesn't have to do that anymore. He can solely concentrate on D. So less responsibility, more productivity, for instance.
Yep.
I mean, I think you've both made the point well in terms of what Dan Quinn will bring in, and I just wanted to ask that question just to try and tease out the point of view on it. I mean, I think it was pretty set we were going to go with someone with experience, considering Marvin Lewis was the other candidate that we interviewed for the job. So they knew what they were doing. As I say, I think Marvin Lewis was the Rooney Rule candidate that they had to interview a minority coach for the role. I think Dan Quinn was always their guy in terms of who they wanted to bring in. But if we bring it all the way back round and we started with special teams, and let's talk about our special teams coordinator, John Fassel. I mean, if anyone has benefited from the new regime of Mike McCarthy, it seems to be John Fassel. As we said earlier, he's got his long snapper, he's got his kicker. How long before he gets his punter that he's worked with? you know, and any of the guys he wants in the late rounds to build his special teams around, he seems to get them. So,
and you could argue that last year, you know, a few of the decisions that were made on special teams, a few of the gambles that we took, were probably him having the ear of Mike McCarthy. So, you know, is it such a good thing? But, you know, to have the ingenuity to come up with a watermelon kick on an onside kick that, you know, how many people thought that we were going to recover that, when at the moment I think onside kick, the chances is in the NFL is about 8% for an onside kick, and you know that to come up with that, to, you know, and I think we did something else later on where we needed an onside kick later on, and we came close to recovering it as well later on in the season as well. There was some other thing that they did that, you know, just caused that second and the players to think about what was happening and do a jump on the ball or do a not. To consistently, you know, yes, you can only control what you can control, but to come up with ideas that potentially put you in game-winning situations, or, you know, get your players into that position that you've got to rely on the players to execute, but to come up with ideas that can put the players in that situation, great.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. The one that will always stick in my mind was the 4th and 10. No, the fake punt. I don't think there was any point in that play where it looked like it was going to come off. I would love to know who. I mean, McCarthy said all the right things from what I remember, but I would love to know who pushed for it, and was it signed off? You know, was it like, did McCarthy okay it? Did McCarthy ask for it? Has Fassel been working on it and they've kept it quiet and thought, Coach, I could get us back in this game here? Or did McCarthy approach him and say, we need a spark, we need you to come up with something here? I would love to know the ins and outs of it. I get he's a good special teams coordinator, but less of the crazy, please, for this coming season, because that was infuriating. There was a couple of, like Lauren says, there was a couple of situations where you're thinking, right, things are not going well. Let's reduce the stupidity in what we call. Let's at least try the basics, as opposed to going. I'll never forget that play. I just thought. I mean, you look at the whole replay. The defender never bought it for 1 second. I think he stood there. He stood there and let his guy go because he thought something's up here, something's not right. He spotted it from the snap, and he's going, "Nah, I'm onto something here," and it never got off the ground. So, if McCarthy asked for it, boo on him. If Fassel asked for it, boo on him as well, because that was it was, in my opinion, it was silly. We were looking for a spark, but do the basics first. You need to find a platform to build on. You can't go and do things like that, in my opinion, because that killed the game. See, once that happened, that was a loss.
Like, they ran the ball in, I believe, the next play, and then kicked off, were intercepted, returned for a pick six. You know, I think like the turnaround from that was 21 points, I believe, in total. And, you know, we weren't winning that game against the football team. So I don't understand why it was done. But if you try and tell Fassel or restrict what Fassel does that in a way hamstring you? Because teams are aware that John Fassel will try something during a game. So if you don't have that unpredictability within you, does that then limit you as a team?
I think we tried it so much though.
Yeah.
Like there was almost as if we were looking for a spark from somewhere. And it was almost as if you could predict, right, the Cowboys are struggling here. They're going to look for a spark from somewhere. So everybody be switched on for the unusual on special teams. I don't think there was... I got to a certain point, and don't ask me to pinpoint it, but it got to a certain point in the season where we became a liability on special teams. It was almost as if we were walking into a trap because teams knew we needed a spark from somewhere. I don't think. I mean, there was that one play. I mean, I know I'm being a bit down on it, but there was that one play where, again, I can't remember who it was, but it was a punt return or a kickoff return. We received it and threw the ball to the other side of the field, and he almost got the touchdown.
Yeah.
Now that worked. Yeah. That was great, but you'd rather not have to do that.
Yeah.
Like if your offense is firing, just do the basics. Let the offense carry the game. Don't do anything silly. So hopefully with a better offense, we'll see less of it.
Yeah. I mean, I do think you made the point well there, or Graham, in terms of the spark had to come from somewhere. It wasn't coming from offense. It definitely wasn't coming from defense. So you'd hope that this season will be a lot more balanced in terms of how the team performs, and that there will be sparks from all three phases of the game. Bringing up the point here. Yeah, I think like DJ Dog is saying, that there is a little bit of an X factor there in it, but I think we have kind of covered off a lot of what is in there. Gentlemen, we're up on nearly an hour and 40 minutes. Who would have thought we would get this long out of special teams and our coaches? So before we go, anything else you would like to say in terms of special teams or our coaching setup?
No,
the less you hear from, I would say that my words of wisdom is the less you hear from special teams, the better season you're having.
Very true point. If our long snapper is snapping the ball correctly and our punter and kicker are kicking correctly, I'm happy. Yeah. But as we say, Team 50 Burger will ride this season. Before we go on, Graham.
It's a shame for special teams because do your job. You didn't do your job. And everybody jumps on you in the press. That they're expected, despite being the lowest guys on the payroll, they're expected. And as soon as they don't do their jobs properly, they're all over the front pages of the Dallas press.
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
It's very true. Before we get out of here, obviously we want to pay the bills, so I'm going to throw it over to one of you two gentlemen.
So if anybody's looking to attend a game this year, and if you're in the lucky position to be able to do that, I know Paul's certainly champing at the bit to try and get to a couple of games, make sure you visit cowboysexperience.com. Treated like royalty, like we've said so many times before. I know that the few of the guys on the show they've enjoyed every second of it. They'll look after you throughout the day, throughout the weekend, and make sure you use that discount code of UK Cowboys because good things happen. I'm sure Lauren will tell you why.
Yeah, you're not a clown, and you'll get free stuff, and that's the main thing.
We have been talking to Barry and the team at Cowboys Experience. They are coming back bigger, better, louder, and more enjoyable than they have been in previous seasons. So make sure, as I say, if you're going next season, that you get in touch with Barry, book your travel package with him, and you will be looked after. As we say, we're on all of the social media platforms. This podcast is available. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Discord. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. All of the social media platforms. Come follow us. interact with us, join us, and give us your opinions. As we say all along, we're only 7 guys here who are giving our opinion. It's you are the MVPs of this program. As we say, with DJ Dog interacting with us through the whole program, Andy always interacting with us, Steve Mountford. It's if the people aren't interacting with us, it doesn't work. So make sure and interact with us.
Just want to thank everybody at UK Cowboys. Just want to thank everybody for joining us during the positional series. We've literally discussed every player on the roster. We've discussed every position on the roster. We've drilled right down through the team. And thank you to everybody for joining us, because there is no off-season in the NFL. We certainly don't treat it as an off-season. Our 24-hour show during the draft will suggest that. And just think we're only weeks away from the big kickoff. Can't believe it's come around again so fast.
And of course, big shout out to Austin, who is also a regular contributor to the show. So make sure and, as we say, interact with us. And as well as ourselves, don't forget to interact with our fellow contributors. You can see them there at the bottom of the screen. The Dallas Cowboys media team themselves, the guys over at 105.3 The Fan, the guys blogging at the boys in SB Nation, Brandon, Marcus, Bluff City Cowboy. I can't think of the rest of them, but all of those guys are there. We're in regular contact with them. They keep us going as well. But gentlemen, as I say, we're nearly approaching an hour and 45 minutes, so I think it's time I let you go. So it's a good night from me.
It's a good night from me. Have a good week, guys.
And it's a good night from them.
Good night, folks.
See you next time.